Hello and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation Florida Chapter educational event, Beyond the Diagnosis. I'm Krista Ellis, Community Program Manager for the Florida and Gulf Coast chapters of the Parkinson's Foundation. I'm tuning in tonight from Tampa, Florida, and we warmly welcome you to the program. I'd love to know where you are tuning in from. Feel free to share your location by typing it into the Q&A box. You are not alone, and your Parkinson's community is here with you today. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom viewing page, click on that Q&A icon and let us know where you're tuning in from. Green Acres, Florida, welcome. Welcome. Davie, Florida, Tampa, Florida, welcome, neighbor. Weston, Florida, Jacksonville, West Palm Beach, New Jersey, welcome. Welcome. Palm Beach Gardens, Parkland, another West Palm Beach, welcome guys. Miami, West Palm, Lakewood Ranch, beautiful, Hobie Sound. Great. Lake Worth, Stuart, Florida. Thank you guys so much for sharing. North Palm Beach. We are reaching many, many, many corners of the state of Florida and even all the way up the East Coast to New Jersey. So thank you all so much. St. Lucie. Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. The Parkinson's Foundation will be hosting virtual events each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of the week. To learn more and to register, please visit parkinson.org/PDHealth. Jennifer will share that link with you in the chat box. The Parkinson's Foundation provides families with free resources, including our website, parkinson.org, educational books, webinars, podcasts, a hospitalization kit, and our toll-free helpline, 1-800-4PD-INFO, which is staffed by bilingual Parkinson's specialists. To learn more about our resources and our upcoming virtual events, remember to visit our website at parkinson.org or reach out to our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO. You can also contact the helpline by email, helpline@parkinson.org. And Jennifer, if you would please type that into the chat. Are you interested in beginning your mindful meditation journey? Join us each Monday to practice mindfulness with your Parkinson's community. Next week, we will be exploring equanimity for the self with Devin Hazy of Ashland, Oregon. Learn more and register at our PD Health at Home website. You can find that link again there in the chat. Next Wellness Wednesday, join our expert speakers to learn about common causes and challenges of vertigo and dizziness in Parkinson's disease. Understand what treatment options are available through your interdisciplinary care team. Learn more and register at parkinson.org/PDHealth. And now it is my sincere pleasure to share a little bit about our speaker this evening. Dr. Henry Moore is Assistant Professor of Clinical Neurology and member of the Division of Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorders at the University of Miami, a designated Parkinson's Foundation Center of Excellence. Dr. Moore is also Director of Movement Disorders for Palm Beach County, which operates at the satellite office at UHealth Boca Raton, and Director of the Neurology Clinic at UHealth Boca Raton. Dr. Moore's clinical and research interests include gait and balance disorders in Parkinson's disease, deep brain stimulation therapy, ataxia, and Huntington's disease. Dr. Moore, thank you so much for spending your Thursday evening with us. I'll pass the mic over to you.
So thank you, Krista, and hopefully everybody's having a great evening. So thank you also to all the organizers at the Parkinson Foundation for the invitation. And hopefully we have a very interesting evening and we learn something about Parkinson, one of my favorite topics, which is the management of advanced Parkinson's disease. So let's start with the slides. So how the presentation is gonna go, we're gonna talk first about a quick understanding about what is Parkinson's disease. And then we're gonna go into what is advanced Parkinson's disease. And then we're gonna finalize with medical treatment options and also surgical treatment options for this condition. Questions are welcome, and then we will as Krista was mentioning, just type it on your chat, and then I will be addressing those at the end. So what is Parkinson's? So, well, Parkinson's disease is a slowly progressive neurodegenerative condition that occurs especially when the cells of the brain called neurons die. So neurodegenerative conditions are characterized by disorders on which the cells, for a reason, start dying. And at the beginning, they are still alive, but damaged, and then eventually they may die. But that happened in Parkinson in a specific area. It's very interesting. It's called substantia nigra. And it's called nigra because nigra means black. Because when you cut a brain on the autopsy, this area normally is black in color. So you can see, I don't know, you can see the arrow, and you can see this is a piece of brain. This is a normal brain, and this is a Parkinson's brain. And you can see on the piece on the left, you have a normal, nice black color on this area, and this is the substantia nigra. This has this shape. And then on if we cut a brain on the same area on somebody with Parkinson's disease,
Sorry to interrupt you. We can't seem to see your slides, and I'd really love to see the brain that you're pointing at.
You don't see the slides?
No, we do not.
Okay, so give me 1 second.
Sure.
Do you see now? No.
No, not yet.
Okay. So maybe we have to share again. Give me 1 second, let me end and then put it again. Okay, now you see the slides?
Yeah, there they are.
Okay, so I'm gonna use this one then. Okay, now you see the slides?
Yes, if you'd like to go into presentation mode.
Yeah, so let me just do that. Now you see them?
Yeah. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna start talking about, first of all, Parkinson's disease. So then we're gonna move into advanced Parkinson, as was mentioned, and then the treatments, medical and surgical options. So what is Parkinson's disease? It's a disease produced by a neurodegeneration, meaning the cells of the brain, for some reason, start dying. And as they die, they start decreasing in number. But the area of degeneration is essentially important on an area of the brain called substantia nigra. So I know you see the arrow here, and you can see two pieces of brain. This is a normal brain, and this is the brain of somebody with Parkinson's. If you see in the area of the normal brain, and this, there is a black color on the center, and these are the cells that are on the substantia nigra. And these cells usually have a pigmentation, that's why they are black. But in somebody with Parkinson, these cells die. So when you, if for a reason you have an autopsy of somebody with Parkinson's, you will see that this area has lost the black color. Means that these cells of the substantia nigra are dying. So, but if you go in depth, you just use a microscope and then you look at the tissue and see what's going on, why the black is disappearing, what you will see is that the normal cells of this area that are normally black, and you see here how the cells are, you see these ovals are the cells, and then you see they have like a black inside. And then you see in the patient with Parkinson that the cells are not there, and you can tell that because the black is not there anymore. But if you go in detail into each of the cells of the Parkinson patients here on this portion of the slide, you will see that the cells have something inside. It's like a sphere. It's like a pink sphere in there. And this pink sphere has a little clear halo around, and this is called Lewy body. And Lewy body, what it is an inclusion, meaning it's something that is not supposed to be there, that is somehow damaging the cell. So Lewy body is an accumulation of proteins. It's a protein called synuclein that accumulates on the cells of the brain, disturbs the cells of the brain, and then eventually kills the cell. So the cell disappears, and if it disappears, the black pigment that they usually have goes away, and that's why you lose the pigmentation. But of course, that starts in the area of the substantia nigra, but then it may spread to the rest of the brain. So Parkinson's disease was described by James Parkinson, and he passed away in 1828. And James Parkinson described the disease on a series of cases of patients that have, up to that point, an unknown disorder. So they all had what he called involuntary tremulous motion with lessened muscular power in parts not in action, and even when supported, with a propensity to bend the trunk forward and to pass from walking to running pace. And he said something that is, now we know is wrong, the senses and intellect being uninjured. So that was his description based on a group of people that over the year he could see that shared those symptoms. And you can see that tremor, you can see that he mentions lessened muscular power, even though that's not correct. We know patients with Parkinson have good muscular power, but they are slow. And then the propensity to bend the trunk forward, and that's typical of Parkinson's, and to have the pass from walking to running. So that sometimes happens, called fascination. So Parkinson was very important on describing the disease and all the features, and what he called at that time shaking palsy or paralysis agitans. Of course, later in his honor, it was called Parkinson's disease. But Parkinson's disease doesn't start on the substantia nigra, as I told you. It starts on other levels, and you can see a brain here on the right. And this is the brainstem, who's the tail of the brain. And you can see how the disease starts here and start progressing forward. Start moving forward to the top of the brain. And then on the top, you can see here on this area will be the substantia nigra. So the disease is there already for years, and we calculate up to 10 to 20 years before it reaches the substantia nigra. So you don't have Parkinson's from the moment you start shaking, you have Parkinson's even before. And then once it reaches this area, of course, destroy the substantia nigra. And when you have no cells of substantia nigra, is when you have, or you have at least half of the substantia nigra available, is when you start having the symptoms, meaning the tremor, the slowness, the stiffness. But the disease doesn't stop there. And if you follow the arrows, you will see how the disease is spread then to the shell of the brain. And the shell is called cortex. And it's where your all your memories are, is where your intellect is where the mood control is, etc. So that was clearly and nicely described by a pathologist called Brack. Although this theory is not completely accepted by everybody, it's very well accepted within the community of Parkinson's. But why that happens? So we don't know. So there are multiple factors. We know there are genes that can make you more propense to develop Parkinson's. We know that toxins can also be important. For example, pesticides, patients that are exposed to pesticides for long period of time or part of their lives, and some other factors. And then these three elements end up having, they start the disease. And then when the disease starts, as I mentioned, you start accumulating these Lewy bodies that are filled of abnormal protein. Then this generates alterations on how the cell metabolizes, or how the cell gets energy. And then eventually you may see even some inflammation. And finally, the cells say, you know what, I'm done, I'm dying. And then sometimes the cell itself programs to death, is that the cells can auto-kill, self-kill itself. And that's why you have one neuron less. If that happens on multiple neurons, then you start having Parkinson's disease. So at the beginning, the patients come usually with some slowness, sometimes perceived by them or by the family members, stiffness and tremor, usually addressed. But later on, this is no longer the case, and the patients may have other problems like freezing of gait, meaning that they try to start walking and they cannot do it, and then they hesitate to start walking on the place. Sometimes this is difficult to handle and the patients may fall. The other thing that happened later on that disease, and I'm talking about 10, 15 years after the diagnosis is done, is balance problems. The patient may start losing balance and they may fall. And then they may start having abnormal posture. They may start leaning forward or having abnormal posture in the trunk, limbs, or neck. The important thing is all of this will lead to falls. And this is what we're trying to prevent. That's one of our key measures of a good response to the therapies and quality of life is falls. Because if patients with Parkinson's fall, they may have a fracture. They're usually old. Usually Parkinson affects people over the age of 60. And then if they have a fracture, the Parkinson's may exacerbate, and then they may get complications. So we always try to prevent falls on advanced stages. But the motor symptom that I mentioned, the tremor, the slowness, the stiffness, is just the tip of the iceberg. And underneath, what we have is a lot of non-motor features like depression, anxiety, panic attacks, fatigue, memory issues, pain, tingling sometimes, poor sense of smell that tends to be one of the first symptoms of Parkinson, sometimes happening even 20 years before the diagnosis. Sometimes the patient refer that they get dizzy when they stand, they have abnormal sweating, usually excess sweating, nasal discharge with no reason, they don't have any problems, they don't have rhinitis, nothing, but they have discharge. Urinary problems, they usually go to the bathroom too often, and they may be also constipated. Constipation usually happens 10, 20 years before the disease. Seborrhea, meaning excessive oily skin, sometimes with rash, usually on the folds around the nose or behind the ear, that's typical. And then problems of sleep, a lot of problems like insomnia, fragmentation of sleep, that they cannot sleep continuously. And sometimes the vivid dreams, the patient say, doctor, my wife said that I punch her at night. I don't know what's going on. The wife said, yes, doctor, I wake up because I feel a punch. And then all of a sudden my husband is doing like this and is fighting with somebody, but it's on his dream. So he's not hallucinating, he's on his dream. So, and this is typical of Parkinson, and that's because Parkinson's damage areas of the brain that affect all of what I told you, affect centers of sleep, affect centers of depression, anxiety, affects memory centers, etc., etc. So, but how is the progression? So let's say you start having the symptoms here. Usually Parkinson's is very easy to diagnose. The primary doctors can do it. And then, but usually at the beginning is very mild, and then they don't recommend any treatment. They say, okay, you have mild Parkinson, just watch it. If it gets worse and then start affecting your life, then let me know to start something. And let's say they start medication. The best medication we know is carbidopa levodopa, which is dopamine. Remember that on Parkinson's, the cells that are on the substantia nigra, they make dopamine. Usually they make this chemical dopamine that is key to move. If you lose dopamine, you will become slow and rigid. So the main treatment will be carbidopa levodopa, which is dopamine. So at the beginning, for the first 3 years, the patient is fine. They say, doctor, I'm fantastic. I'm not having any problems. But then as the disease progresses, then they start going to a period of what we call motor complications. Meaning, doctor, the medication doesn't last 6 hours. Now it lasts 4. Or when I take my pill, I start having, for some reason, some involuntary movement that I've never had before. These are called dyskinesias. So these motor fluctuations and dyskinesias, these are usually happening on this period called motor complications. But then if the disease continues, then the patient may start complaining of symptoms that do not improve with medications. For example, balance problems and freezing that may not improve. And then late on the disease, after 15, 17 years, the patient may start saying, doctor, my memory is not the same, I'm forgetful, and they may start having hallucinations, usually visual. Usually they start seeing objects that do not exist, etc. So I have a first question here, and I think Krista is interested in asking you questions to see, to have a quick poll about these issues. Question number 1 will be, do you think you have advanced Parkinson's disease? Yes or no? Very simple. Okay, so the vast majority says no, I do not. So I will say 64 say no, 26% says yes, I do. So, and 10% is not sure. So hopefully we can clarify 10%, and hopefully the others are right. So we'll see. So you will get your own answers with this one. So what is advanced Parkinson's then? That's the topic. So advanced Parkinson is a stage of the disease where at least one of the following occurs. Number 1, you have motor complications, meaning fluctuations and dyskinesias, meaning your medication doesn't last enough, or you take your pills and the pills don't work immediately, they take a while to work, or the pills are working, but all of a sudden the effect disappears, and then you start getting your symptoms again. The other possibility is that you have dyskinesias. So you have dyskinesias, involuntary movement that are bothersome. If they're mild and not bothersome, you are not on the advanced Parkinson's yet. Then the other possibility is that you have advanced Parkinson's if you are disabled and you have a disability that interfere with your independence despite taking your medications. And then the other option is you are advanced if you have balance problems and falls. You are advanced also, you have this phenomena called freezing, that you cannot move for some second and you have problems to taking the first step. And you are advanced, you have marked postural deformities, severe postural deformities. No, I'm not talking about a little stoop, just severe postural deformities. So you have any of those, you have an advanced Parkinson's disease. So what happens? So why this occurs? Why the carbidopa, levodopa, the Sinemet was lasting 6 hours at the beginning, you were taking it 3 times a day with no problem, and all of a sudden start lasting less. So what happened is the disease progress. The cells of the brain that usually transform the carbidopa, levodopa, which is a medication, into dopamine decrease on number, and they're no longer available, and then to make enough dopamine, even if you provide the medication. So the medication may start lasting less and less. Why? Is because your storage of dopamine on your brain start going to zero. So at the beginning, when you take your Parkinson's disease medications, you have a nice, you could see your blood, you will see that the Parkinson medication go up and then reach a peak and then goes down. And then the blue one, the blue area is where you're supposed to be. That means that you're going to be fine. But as the disease progresses, let's say for a few years, then you will see that as you take your pill, you will pass through a period of time on which you are not on blue, meaning you are not good. And then so you will have to wait 20, 30 minutes for the pill to work. And then the pill will work and it will be nice. But then you will have an excess of medication. So look, this is over the blue. So this is too much medication, meaning you're gonna have opposite to the slowness. So you will have involuntary movements. Now the dopamine is making you move too much, and then the medication will decrease. So then the extra movement dyskinesia will resolve, and then you will go to a period of off, meaning the medication doesn't work anymore because it's below the blue. And then when you take the next one, the same thing will happen. It will take a while for that medication to have effect. It will work, and then the dyskinesia, etc. So you go into a roller coaster, kind of. But as you see, the roller coaster is interesting. The roller coaster gets worse as the years progress. So if this is, let's say, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years of disease, 20 years, you will see that you will be on less of the blue and more on the red and the yellow. So more on the off. This is the off, meaning the medication is not working. And more on the dyskinesia, that when the medication works, you will have extra movement rather than normality, normal movements. So this is what happened on patients with dyskinesia and also with motor fluctuations. So the other interesting event is, let's say you take your medication at 7 a.m. and then the medication works nicely, but then you will see that after the peak, the medication goes down, goes down, goes down, goes down. You're still working, but around 11 or 11:30, the medication doesn't work anymore. And you take your next pill at 1 here. So this hour you will be off, meaning the medication is not working. So meaning off, meaning you will get more tremor again, slowness again, etc. But a lot of the patients that have wearing off, they also have delay on, meaning that they take the pill, the next one, and the pill doesn't work. And usually, you look at this, you take it at 1 and it starts working at 4. So you can see the patient spend 4 hours without the effect medication, 4 hours in which the patient cannot move very well, cannot do his activities, etc. This is very typical combination wearing off and delay on. And we're going to explain in the next slide why that can happen. So gastric emptying is very important. When you take your pills, the pill have to go from your mouth to your stomach and then go to the intestine to be absorbed. And then when it's absorbed, the pill goes to your brain through the blood, and the brain makes dopamine, and then you get improvement. And usually this process is very quick, less than 10 minutes. But when you have Parkinson's, what happens is that the nerves that go to the intestine and the stomach are also damaged by Parkinson. It's not just the brain, outside the brain also. So if this brain going to the stomach are damaged, the stomach may not move very well. And these pills are going to start sitting here and not going to move to the intestine, which is the area for absorption. So you take the pill stays here, doesn't move, and then it doesn't pass to be absorbed. So that's the explanation why you take your pill and doesn't work and takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. And then all of a sudden it passed, and then that's the effect, but it was too late. So the other thing that make the stomach be slow is the meals, especially the fatty meals, make the stomach to be very slow in its movement, and then delay the push of the medication to be absorbed. So the other thing that interferes with the pills, especially when they reach the intestine, is the protein, because protein can compete with the levodopa, with the Sinemet. So what happens when you take protein is the protein blocks the absorption of the Sinemet and don't let the Sinemet to go from the intestine up to the brain. That's why we usually recommend take pills 1 hour before or after your meals, especially the heavy protein meals. So all of this affects absorption of levodopa, but if you don't believe me, so this is a real picture of a real patient on which they did an endoscopy. Okay, they put a tube through the mouth and they look at the stomach. And they did endoscopy 1 hour and a half after the patient took the pill. So it's a patient with Parkinson. They told the patient, take the pill, and then they knew that the patient had this problem, delay onset of effect, so they didn't know why. So they took the endoscopy, and what did they find? This is the carbidopa levodopa, the yellow pill. So the carbidopa levodopa wasn't absorbed, sitting on the stomach for 1 hour and a half. So, and that's the reason, that's confirmed what I was saying to you, the delay emptying of the stomach produced by Parkinson's perhaps itself. So normally the medication, the famous Sinemet, is the best medication, but it has a very short life. It lasts, I will say, up to 3 hours. The half-life will be 1.5, but normally it's up to 3 hours. So the reason why at the beginning of the disease, you take Sinemet 3 times a day and then you feel that the medication doesn't go away is because you still have dopamine in your brain, in your storage. But as the disease progresses, the storage go empty and then you lose all the capability to buffer that. So you just depend on the pill. That's why your pill lasts 2 to 3 hours, which is the normal life of the pill on the blood. So what do we do to treat this advanced Parkinson, this fluctuation, this kinesias? What do we do? Well, we have a menu. We have a menu of options that we can use. And then these are all the medication we have for Parkinson's, the old ones and the new ones. And the highlighted on green, on yellow, are the new ones: Rytary, Duopa, Imbrilla, Kingmovie, Nurian, Sonjenti, Sadago, Gocovri. So I'm going to talk about some of those during the presentation for you to understand. There have been recent, in the last 2 years, a lot of medication being released, especially the yellow ones that you see there. Carbidopa levodopa is the main one, is the one that makes dopamine, the main medication, but it has these problems that over time can last less. These medications, dopamine agonists, it can extend the life a little bit of the carbidopa levodopa. Same thing with this group called COMT inhibitors. The main guy is here entacapone, that can extend the life of carbidopa levodopa. These others, selegiline and rasagiline, called Asilet, can also extend the life of carbidopa levodopa. This one here is called amantadine. That is the one that you usually use for dyskinesia, but there is a new one called amantadine ER Gocovri, which is a little better than the amantadine that we also use for dyskinesias. The others are new medication. You see a new medication every single category: a new dopamine agonist on the sublingual film called Kingmovie, a new type of medication called istradefylline, which also helps Parkinson's symptoms and improve the effect of the carbidopa levodopa, a new medication to extend the life of carbidopa levodopa called opicapone, and another one called Sadago here. So let's go quickly So one of the old ones was the carbidopa-levodopa extended release. You may know that. It's called Rytary. For patients which the medication lasts a very short time, we can switch carbidopa-levodopa to Rytary, and Rytary combines normal carbidopa-levodopa with extended release carbidopa-levodopa on a ratio of 2:1 on the single capsule. And what it does is, imagine this is your normal carbidopa-levodopa that will do this and that on your blood. So you take it, it peaks at 2 hours and then goes down. By 3 hours, 4 hours, you don't have anything. So that if you take the carbidopa-levodopa Rytary, you take the Rytary, look what happened. You take your pill and then it extends the life of the pill up to here. So it may last up to 4-6 hours and then go down. So it's better. And the Rytary was tested on multiple clinical trials and showed to be efficacious. I don't want to bother you with numbers, etc., but it shows that compared with a normal carbidopa-levodopa, extend the life. For example, your off time will improve by up to 2 hours per day. So the other medication to talk is the safinamide, also called Sadavo. It's a medication released a couple of years ago. And then this medication has a very interesting mechanism of action. It enhances the dopamine function, blocks some channels that we don't want to go into details, and also blocks something called the glutamate release, which is, believe it or not, good for Parkinson patients. And what it does, it's indicated for patients that have been taking carbidopa-levodopa, the Sinemet, but experiencing off times. So it may extend the life of carbidopa-levodopa. So that's one option, and this is a medication that's available. It's a once-a-day tablet. And this is the study that led for the approval by the FDA. And you can see patients that don't take that take placebo, meaning nothing, they don't have a significant improvement on the on time, meaning the time that they are good during the day. Whereas patients that take the safinamide, they have a significant improvement compared with the other group that they don't take anything on the on time. And you can see 1.5 hours versus 0.5 hours. So at least 1 hour of improvement per day. But 1 hour more on time is not too much. It's something, it's not too much. So it's not the best medication of the world, but it's something that can help you. So the other medication that recently been released is called opicapone on Ongentys. And this medication, what it does is also extend the life of carbidopa-levodopa. It's taking once a day, and it will replace another medication called entacapone that you will have to take with every single dose of carbidopa-levodopa. This one you take just one a day and extend all that carbidopa-levodopa you will take through the day, trying to make your day more covered and then to extend your on time. So, but in the largest trial to date, opicapone reduced the off time by an average of 2 hours compared to 1 hour in the placebo. So even the group of people that took nothing, they said that they were getting better on the on time, believe it or not. So that happened on Parkinson's. Patients have a lot of placebo effect. But the medication was better than that. It was 2 hours versus 1 hour. So you will say, well, there is a net gain of 1 hour per day. Again, not too much is there. Maybe you're going to be on the 2 hours range. That will be good. So again, it's a good medication to consider, and it's going to be released this year. So the other medication that is already on the market, released also this year, was Nurians. And Nurians is a very potent medication approved on August 2019. And then it works on the different mechanism. That Nurian doesn't work on dopamine anymore. It works on other chemical. The name doesn't really matter. It's called adenosine. And then doing that adenosine thing, it will also release the system that the brain has to produce movement. So it's a pro-movement medication too. So, and then the dose goes from 20 to 40 milligrams. It's just 1 tablet a day. So if 20 doesn't work, you try 40. 40 doesn't work, then it doesn't work for you. And it may reduce the off time, meaning the time that you have slowness, rigidity per day by 1 to 1.5 hours. Let's continue. So there is a spray here on the market. Spray for Parkinson. Yeah, I knew those for asthma, but not for Parkinson. Well, sometimes the patient with Parkinson experiences sudden off, meaning that the medication is working nicely and all of a sudden the medication loses effect. And that's called sudden off. When that happens, they usually take a pill, but the pill may take an hour to work sometimes. So to avoid that, so they can use a spray, and this spray can affect as can be efficacious, can turn you on in as little as 10 minutes, and it's much better than placebo. You see here, patients taking placebo, no improvement. Patients taking the spray, improvement. So if the slope is down, it's improvement. So spray, very good. You can use it 4 or 5 times per day as needed. The important thing, you can keep it in your pocket. So you got the safety that if the carbidopa levodopa doesn't work, I immediately do the spray, and it will be on 10 minutes. So it gives you safety that you can go to a meeting, to the movie theater, etc., and not be dealing with the off that you usually will deal with a pill. And why it works so fast is because it goes from your mouth through your lungs to your blood. It doesn't go to the stomach. It doesn't matter your stomach is slow. It doesn't matter you use protein. It goes straight to your brain. So, and then the other one that has been released on the same line is Kingmovie. Kingmovie is a medication that is placed on a film, on the little paper film that is like Listerine. If you know what is Listerine, Listerine is these strips to cool your mouth. So this is something similar. So you just raise, it's like a film that you will peel off, put it on your tongue, wait 10 minutes, and voila, you are on again. So you don't like the spray, this will be another option for you. Very potent, and you can use it as a max time of 5 times per day. Again, it's very efficacious. So patient that use the film got better. Patient that they didn't use it, they didn't get better. So let's talk about a little bit dyskinesia. What are dyskinesias? Are involuntary movements that I told you when the medication goes too high, too peak, and sometimes as the disease progresses, your chances increase. How much? 10% per year. So if you are a patient with 10 years of disease, 10 by 10, 100%. Most of the patients at 10 years of disease have dyskinesia. But if you have 5 years of disease, your chances of having dyskinesias are 50%. But we count from the moment you start carbidopa levodopa. We don't count the whole Parkinson's. So your risk of dyskinesia is 10% per year from the moment you start carbidopa levodopa, meaning from the moment you start cinnamon. That's why, doctor, we prefer to postpone that carbidopa levodopa when their symptoms are really bothersome for you, and when you already try other medications are less potent before, like for example, pramipexole, Neupropatch, etc. So again, we talk about the dyskinesias, and this is with that part on which the medication is too high for the normality, and your normality is your blue. And then every time you take the medication, you will say, doctor, after an hour, I start having involuntary movements, and then I have them for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the movements disappear. It's because your dopamine is going down again, etc. And then what do we have for dyskinesia? Well, it will be easy to say. If you lower your carbidopa levodopa, if you tell the patient to lower the medication, then your curve will be here, and then you will be fine. But most likely you will also be off. So in patients on which we cannot lower the medication, the carbidopa levodopa, we have medication that we can add to reduce dyskinesia. And the main one for years has been amantadine. Amantadine, which is an antiviral, believe it or not, but it's also an anti-dyskinesia. So, but there is a new amantadine recently discovered called Gocovri that you just take one at night, and it's better. It reaches better levels on your blood and is more efficacious than the regular amantadine. There are other attempts done to try to avoid the dyskinesia, giving you medication that don't fluctuate too much, that they make that the cinnamon doesn't do this fluctuation roller coaster up and down. But those medications are not very efficacious. So question number 2, have you heard about pumps for Parkinson's disease? Let's see what the people say. Okay, yes, I have. There is 1/3 say yes, 2/3 say no. So let's talk about pumps, because pumps is one of the treatments for advanced Parkinson's. And why is that important? Carbidopa levodopa was invented on 1967. Remember, Parkinson was described on 1817, so it took like 150 years before we discovered a medication that really could improve the patients. But it took also, from that moment that the levodopa was approved by the FDA, it took up to 2015 to have the first pump available in USA, which is called Duopa. This was available already in Europe from 2004. And don't ask me why. Usually FDA takes a little while before Europe, usually after Europe for approving medications. So what are the pumps? Are tubes that you're going to put into your intestine. For example, this is a carbidopa levodopa pump. It's the same Cinemed, but made the liquid. And the liquid goes into this cassette here. And then the cassette is connected to the pump. That when you push the button that says on, it's going to start working. It's going to start pushing this carbidopa levodopa through the tube to your intestine. The tube goes exactly to the intestine where it needs to be absorbed. So it doesn't go to the stomach. So there is no problem from the stomach being slow. We don't care. So, and then from that moment, the medication is absorbed and works. But since the pump works all day long, for the moment you are awake to the moment you go to bed, at least 16 hours, and it releases carbidopa levodopa, the Cinemed, continuously, you won't have as many up and down. You won't have the roller coaster. So you won't have the off, you won't have the dyskinesias too much. You will be kind of even. So patients that have a lot of fluctuations, up and downs, off, and they don't improve with that medication that I already explained to you, they may opt for this pump. So that's one of the options. And the pump has proven, compared to placebo, to improve at least 2 hours the off time per day. So, however, some people will say, well, doctor, but I don't like a tube into my intestine, you know, so the pump looks a little big. So for those patients, there is another pump that is smaller that can go into the skin. So this one, it goes with a needle, very small tube into the skin. And then you see how small is the cassette and everything. However, this pump is not available on US, it's available in Europe only. Although the studies has been done in US and it's proven to be beneficial. So I hope soon it will be approved here. That's called apomorphine pump. However, there are other modes of delivery that are being looking recently. And then there are other pumps for carbidopa levodopa being subcutaneous too. And there is a trial ongoing called Indigo trial that is being investigating that issue and seeing. There are some complications because carbidopa levodopa, when it goes through the skin, sometimes can form nodules that may be painful, but they may refine the medication and hopefully it may be beneficial and an option for you guys in the future. So what happened with medications don't work anymore? So what do you do? So what you do is you say, okay, maybe something else. So go to my Parkinson doctor, and the Parkinson doctor will say, okay, there are surgeries for Parkinson's. On the old days, we cut certain areas of the brain, we burn certain areas of the brain to make the patients improve. But on the recent days, we don't do this anymore. We don't need to burn the brain. We just put a wire, the wire releases an electricity, and the electricity somehow makes the abnormalities in your brain with those chemicals to be completely stable. So when your dopamine is low on your brain, the electrical activity of your brain gets abnormal. So like your brain starts going into like a break circuit, let's say. And that's caused by the lack of dopamine, meaning cells don't make dopamine, lack of dopamine alters the normal electricity of your brain, and that generates the symptoms. So what this wire intends to do, the deep brain stimulation, is to restore the electrical peace on your brain and therefore improve your symptoms. So question number 3, if indicated, would you be interested in having deep brain stimulation? Yes or no?
And while you're answering that question, Dr. Moore, I just want to give you a time check. It is 6:45. We have lots of questions to get to.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so half and a half. Okay, 44 says yes, 56 says no. Okay, so let's see if we can convince you that DBS is not as bad as you may think. So it's a surgical therapy for Parkinson's. It consists on putting wires in your brain. The wires are connected by another wire. Everything is under the skin. You don't see anything, to a kind of pacemaker that you have in your chest under the skin. And then this releases electricity that goes to your brain, to both wires, and that restores peace on your brain, the electrical peace on your brain. Your symptoms will get better. This is existing for 18 years already. It was approved in 2002. So it's not a new therapy. It's very old and very well proven. And then where the wire goes is to a small area of the brain called either subthalamic nucleus, which is the one on red, or to another area of the brain, which is close to it, called GPI. The name doesn't really matter. This is your doctor who decides which is the best place, but both work very nicely. And then where is the moment on which you can check for DBS? Well, it's not when you have mild symptoms. Your symptoms are mild, you don't need surgery. If your symptoms are so severe, if you're already falling, have a lot of freezing, problems with memory, then you are not good candidate for DBS anymore. So it's too advanced. So that moment, the window of opportunity when you're in the center, when you already have advanced symptoms, means your cinema doesn't last, you have dyskinesia, your doctor is challenged with changes on medication, and still, despite that, you have a lot of off time. That's when you are a good candidate. So the DBS is good for the slowness, for tremors, stiffness. It will stop your dyskinesia, your tremor. It will reduce or eliminate your off time. However, there are certain things that they may not get better, like your speech, balance, freezing, and handwriting. And of course, things that are not related to movement will not improve, like, for example, memory, constipation, etc. So which is the best patient? A patient that has Parkinson's disease, that responds very well to carbidopa, levodopa when it works, even if it works for an hour. If you, during this hour, you feel right now very well, so you can anticipate that this hour will extend through the whole day when you are with DBS. So, of course, realistic expectations are also desired. So, patients that do not have Parkinson, that have other forms of Parkinson that are atypical, or they have dementia, they don't benefit from DBS. And then the procedure is done on the operative room, and you can see here a patient having the leads implanted, and a lot of people around him, a lot of monitors, etc., etc. And then the complications are not very high. Hemorrhage, when you're putting the lead, less than 5%. Hardware-related complicated 7%. Suicide extremely rare. In our that also changed depending the center. Our surgeon is so good, his chance of complication is less than 1%. He has done more than 700 cases. It's Dr. Jonathan Jagger. So, however, this DBS has advances. So every year we see how the technology improves and makes the physician to be able to program the patient easily and have more versatility to improve your symptom without causing problems or side effects. So, and then there are three systems. One is called Medtronic, and you can see here, and this is the wire that goes into the brain, and then this is what goes in your chest, and this is what is given to the patient to control. The patient can also up and down the stimulation, the electricity, to control the symptoms better. There is another brand called St. Jude that it has another nuance, that these electrodes, these areas can be activated, and then you can see three here on this level. So it allows flexibility for the doctor to guide the electricity to this side or this side, depending on which is best for you. And then the other system is called Boston Scientific, that is also very good. One of the latest. The leads are very good, very well done. And then you can play with the current up and down. A lot of versatility for the doctor that manipulates, and very small battery that is very difficult to even notice. So, however, DBS is also advanced, and now you can listen to your brain. So that's what it is. So this is, you can listen to your brain. So the same wires that you will put in the patient's brain, let's say this wire, that normally with a traditional DBS will just stabilize the currents, make your generate some peaceful electrical discharges on the brain, so you get better in your Parkinson's symptoms. Now we can put the same leads and then listen to the brain, because the brain generates waves, and that's the way the brain talks, the neurons talk. And then we identify waves that are abnormal, that are produced on Parkinson's. So when we change the parameters on the stimulation, the doctor changed the parameters, we can see how these changes get better and therefore transduce into improvement. So this is called brain sense technology, and this is done by a company called Medtronic. So the same first company I show you, and the DBS is called Percept DBS. So now we can put this wire that, besides giving you therapy, improving your symptoms, can facilitate the doctor to read to your brain, and you can actually press a button when you feel the worst, so your doctor can analyze these waves later on when you go to the visit and give you precise therapy for the moments of your symptoms. So, technological advances exist. Telemedicine and wearable technologies are coming on Parkinson's, and you know telemedicine is being a boom now with the COVID. They force physicians to go into telemedicine. University of Miami has telemedicine service, so if you don't want to come to the office because you're concerned about COVID, you can see me on telemedicine, of course. And then in the past, when we want to check how the patient was doing with the medication, we give you this paper and we say, okay, to the patient, mark when you are off, when you're on through the day. And we give them a diary, and this diary for a day. And they tell the patient, okay, when you wake up, put here that you are on or off. Or if you are on, tell if you are dyskinesia, you don't have dyskinesia. And then bring that paper to the next visit so your doctor can tell what's going on and can help you. Now we don't need that anymore. There are wearable sensors that patients can use, and then you use it for a week and then return it to the patient's office. And then I can upload this, connect this to my computer and get this nice graph on which I can tell on what moments of the day you have dyskinesia, on what moments you're off, without you telling me anything. You just bring the sensor, I can tell you. And these lines are the moments you take your medication. So I can tell when you took your medications, when you have dyskinesia, when you have off, and I can adjust the medications accordingly. So the idea is on the future that we could do this by telemedicine, that we could just see you once in a while, but most of the other visits will be at home, on which with your sensors that you have, you can send information to us, maybe to a cloud, and we can maybe adjust your medications properly, or maybe adjust your DBS remotely. Maybe you will be a point on which you won't need to come to the office to do adjustments on DBS. I can do it through a cloud. So other therapies, cannabis, yoga, glutathione, music, exercise, boxing, these are therapies for Parkinson, not particularly for advanced Parkinson, but for everybody. Cannabis is not very proven. So there are certain studies that say that it may work, but there's never been a study on Parkinson. So I prefer my patients to avoid going into that until we have more solid data. Exercise definitely help, at least 30 minutes of exercise, at least 5 days a week. It shows to work, and a study was done by the Parkinson's Foundation. And then exercise with intensity is an important thing, stationary bike, elliptical, aqua therapy, etc. Boxing for Parkinson's is very important, and there is a program for Parkinson called Rocksteady Boxing, and you put rocksteadyboxing.org, you can find a place that is close to your house that have this therapy. And then clinical trials are very important. Less than 1% of people with Parkinson participate. Very important to participate, because if you don't participate, we cannot continue learning about Parkinson and developing new therapies for you guys. If you want to participate, the best website is this one called clinicaltrials.gov, which is from the government, so it's very serious. Whatever is here is serious. However, you can also go to the Parkinson's Foundation website, and then there are also some trials listed over there on parkinsons.org. What studies are we doing at University of Miami? So if you have Parkinson's and your Parkinson is mild, there are 2 trials, very early Parkinson, there are 2 trials we are doing. One with it's called Pharma2B trials, sponsored by this company, Pharma2B. And then it's another trial that we are doing with a company called Neurology, on which we are testing 2 medications for early Parkinson's. This is for people that has early, just diagnosed Parkinson's. If you are a more advanced patient with Parkinson, we are testing this medication called IPX203, which is a very extended release version of Cinemed. It may last up to 8 hours, believe it or not. Even you have off, if your medication was lasting 2-3 hours, it may last these 7-8 hours. These medications are clinical trials, and we're doing this trial at Boca Raton office, at my office. And then if you're interested in DBS, Dr. Luca, one of my colleagues, is doing 2 studies on DBS. One is called Intrepid study. And then if you have a lot of freezing and nothing improves your freezing, Dr. Luca is implanting a wire on this area of the brain called cuneiform nucleus to try to improve freezing of gait. If you're interested in any of those trials, call my office and we'll let you know more. Finally, a couple of words. Parkinson's Foundation has been doing a couple of trials, very interesting. One is the Parkinson's Outcome Project, more than 13,000 participants. The idea of this project is to recruit, to get information about which are the best therapies that work for Parkinson people on real life. And then we're learning a lot of information here. For example, we learned that exercise is very, very important. There is another trial they're trying to embark. It's called PD generation study. In this study, they're offering free genetic tests for patients with Parkinson's disease in order to learn more from your genes. The genes may be a clue for a better treatment and perhaps something to maybe slow down the disease or maybe cure the disease. So we need to learn more about that. And then we don't know, we don't have the information. Hopefully, if you participate on this trial, PD generation trial, we may be learning more about that and doing that genetic testing for free. They usually are very expensive. So if hopefully you like this talk, and if you have any questions or you would like to see me for an appointment, I am working at University of Miami at the Boca Raton office every day from Monday to Thursdays from 8 to 5. And my secretary is Roxana. Many of you may know her. This is the appointment line. If you are interested in getting an appointment with me. Now I leave up to Krista for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luca. And I just want to thank everyone who took the time to sit and listen to the much knowledge and thorough presentation that Dr. Moore was able to offer us tonight. And Dr. Moore, we have a lot of questions to get to, which means people's brains are thinking, right?
Okay, I like it. I like it. Just try to group the questions. Let's see how we can answer the best way.
The first question that came in, what effect does Parkinson's disease have on eyesight?
Well, that's interesting. Not directly, but there are dopamine cells on the retina. So and then it's well known now that patients with Parkinson's may have changes on the retina, changes that may not be perceptible for the patient. But if we do a study called OCT, ocular computer tomography, we can detect changes, some thinning on the retina in some areas. That's one. This is a study more experimental, most to see if this can be a biomarker of Parkinson's, so it marks that progression of disease in the future. Besides of that, patient with Parkinson's may have problems on the contrast sensitivity. When there is no light, they may have problems distinguishing letters, reading. They may also have problems focusing, especially for reading. They may have problems to read because the eyes won't go to the center to focus properly. And the other thing, they may have problems on what we call depth perception, meaning if they want to sit on the chair, and maybe family members have seen that, they usually sit on the edge because their brain cannot calculate the whole depth of the chair, how deep is the chair. So this is a problem, not just the eyes, also the computer that processes the image and to make you calculate where you have to sit to be in the center.
I didn't realize that there could be so many changes with eyesight in Parkinson's. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Moore, someone writes in, how can I stop leg spasms from interfering with sleep? What can I do to sleep better?
Okay, so sleep is an issue, but if you have leg spasms interfering your sleep, so one option is to give you medications at night. So carbidopa, levodopa at night. Leg spasms may come when your dopamine level is low. During the day, you take your medication, so your dopamine levels stay high, but at night, you take your last one at maybe 9 p.m., and then you go to sleep. By maybe midnight, 1 a.m., your dopamine levels are sinking, are zero. So, and that may trigger spasms. So they call it dystonia. What can we do is add medications at night. Sometimes we can add extended release carbidopa, levodopa at bedtime, or Rytari at bedtime. Some others we can add patches. For example, there's a patch called Neupro that may work 24 hours, so it can work through the night and give you some dopamine through the night. In cases that these measures don't work, we can inject you with Botox, botulinum toxin on the legs to calm down the spasm. That will help for 3 months. You will have to be re-injected every 3 months.
And can you talk a little bit more generally about how sleep is affected by Parkinson's disease?
Sleep is key. There are multiple sleep centers on the brain. So sleep in Parkinson patients is affected. Normally, they have sometimes problems falling asleep. But there are others that they say, doctor, I fall asleep like a baby, but I wake up 2-3 hours later. And then I don't know why. And then I go fall back asleep. And then I wake up 2-3 hours later. And then I realize 5 in the morning. So I say, okay, why not to stay awake? But you summate that the net amount of time that they slept was very, 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 very minimal. And then not enough. And they never reached restorative sleep. So they will wake up in the morning. See, they woke up multiple times. They will feel that they didn't sleep at all. They're very tired. So that's one. And that can be due to Parkinson's. Melatonin is useful for that, up to 10 milligrams at night. It can help. And then also help what we call sleep hygiene, meaning avoiding light at night, avoiding TV on at night, conversations at night. Try to keep your room just to sleep, not to do anything else, not to work, not to watch TV. That helps. And of course, if these measures don't work, sleeping pills. On the other angle, some patients have something called REM behavior disorder I was describing, sleep fighting at night. Doctor, my husband falls asleep and start fighting at the middle of the night. They punch me in the face. Sometimes he falls out of bed. And that can be due to direct damage of the Parkinson's on the centers of the brain. And then if that happens, there are two solutions. One is melatonin, again, or clonazepam. That can also help. Thirdly, a patient with sleep with Parkinson's may also develop apnea. And some of them may benefit from a CPAP machines or machines to counteract the apnea. So if there are a lot of sleep problems, contact your neurologist or a sleep doctor for help.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And I'll just put a plug. The Parkinson's Foundation does have an entire event, much like tonight's program, on our YouTube channel and on our Parkinson.org PD Health virtual experience webpage, where we target specifically sleep. So if you're looking for more information following everything that Dr. Moore has offered us this evening, feel free to find that video archived at the Parkinson's Foundation's website. We have a couple more questions. Why do the tremors differ in intensity at different times and days?
Very nice question. So tremor is the less understood Parkinson's symptom. You'll say, what? But everybody, most patients with Parkinson have tremor. Well, yeah, but it's not very well understood. Tremor is not really produced by lack of dopamine. Lack of dopamine produces slowness, stiffness, freezing, but not really tremor. So the tremor seems to be a different animal. And it seems to be like the lack of dopamine produces slowness, and somehow that slowness changes the circuit in the brain and activate other areas that produce the tremor as a compensatory mechanism. That's how we understand tremor. So because of that, the medications for Parkinson sometimes do not improve tremor at all. And sometimes they do it. And for those patients on which the medication do not improve the tremor, sometimes deep brain stimulation is the only thing. It's something that restores the peace on the brain again, the electrical peace, as I was saying. Tremor also is very variable. It changes with your anxiety, your stress. So you're more anxious, more stressed. You have an argument with somebody, you will get more shaking. You get calm, you will get better. You have an infection or a medical problem, tremor will get worse. You get better, tremor will get better. So it's very variable. We sometimes don't go by tremor too much. We go more by slowness on Parkinson.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Mm-hmm.
How would you manage freezing and hand pain?
Hand pain. Freezing of gait is very interesting. Freezing of gait, half of the time, gets better with more increasing doses of dopamine, meaning the carbidopa, levodopa, the cinnamon. So sometimes you go to the doctor office, the doctor, I have freezing, I never had that before. Okay, your doctor say, okay, don't worry. How many cinnamon you take? 1 4 times a day. Okay, take 1.5 4 times a day. And you say, okay, freezing goes away, I'm fine now. But in 50% of the cases, doesn't go away. And then I can increase, double it, triple it, and you will get side effects from too much cinnamon, but the freezing continues. And that means that there are other circuits on the brain that are getting affected that are not related to dopamine. Remember that tremor? No, everything is dopamine. You see? So there are other circuits that can get damaged and they won't get better with more dopamine. So these are the advanced symptoms of Parkinson's. And for those patients, there have been tried some medications for that. Nothing really has improved those. And that's why, for example, my colleague, Dr. Luca, is trying to do a DBS study in which he will implant wire on other areas of the brain to control freezing. But again, very challenging case. It affects your life a lot because with freezing, sometimes you're very frustrated, you fall, etc., etc.
Thank you so much. And could you briefly go over what atypical Parkinson's is? And
yeah.
They say that my brother has progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, and I'm not sure how to help him.
Atypical Parkinson means the patient have the same Parkinson symptom, meaning slowness, rigidity. Some of them have tremors, some of them not. For example, PSPs do not have tremors, but they also have other symptoms. And then the key part to call it atypical is that they do not improve with cinnamon. That's the equal atypical. If you improve with cinnamon, that's usually typical, meaning the regular Parkinson's. If you do not improve with cinnamon, that's not good news. You may be on this bag called atypical. And within this bag, there are multiple members on the bag, one being PSP. It's a group of members on which, besides the Parkinson, which is rapid and progressive, very rapid, they have problems on the eye movements. They cannot move the eyes up and down. There is another group called MSA, on which the patients have dropping on the blood pressure all of a sudden, very rapid Parkinson's. And there is another one called Lewy body dementia, on which you have dementia a lot and Parkinson's symptoms. And the last group called corticobasal syndrome, on which they have a lot of unilateral stiffness with some other problems on the sensory aspects of the brain. But all of these are poorly responsive to carbidopa, levodopa. They don't respond to medication and they progress faster than normal Parkinson's.
Thanks, Dr. Moore. With the CD/LD, carbidopa, levodopa medication, if you can't take the pill an hour before eating, then will it be just as effective if you take it an hour after eating?
Well, what happened is we don't know how much protein you're going to get and for how long it's going to sit on your stomach. Remember, you have gastroparesis, so it's not just the pill that is going to be processed slowly. Also, your food is going to sit more time in the stomach. So I usually prefer before than after, but if there is no chance and you take your pills every 3 hours, it's going to be a challenge just for you to calculate exactly the time. So do your best. But the other option is, if you have a lot of fluctuations, you can also move your protein for the night. So I tell my patient, okay, take your protein, all your protein of the day at night, because at night, who cares? You know, you're going to go to sleep, and then take food without protein during the day, so it has less interference with your carbidopa, levodopa. So that could be another alternative.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. So I'm noticing that our participants are not dropping off, and I have just a few more questions from our live audience today. Great. So we'll take about 5, maybe 10 more minutes to get through the question.
Sure, no problem, no problem.
Question. It seems since I started taking my medication close to bedtime, I wake up multiple times at night. Is this because of my meds? Are there any other medications that are known to cause this type of side effect?
Well, when you take a very high dose of carbidopa levodopa at night, sometimes it has an activating effect. So sometimes it disrupts your sleep when when the peak is too high at night. That's why when we use carbidopa levodopa at night, we use the slow release and we don't use the regular release that peaks too much and activates you. So that can happen, but also could be due to Parkinson's. Parkinson's can produce the disruption. It doesn't have to be just the medication. It could be Parkinson itself.
Thank you. Thank you. What are the signs of being over-medicated? They write in, I have very few off periods and no other problems that the ones that you've listed, but I'm unsure if I'm taking too many meds. So what are some of the signs of being over-medicated?
Well, over-medicated will be the main one, dyskinesia, no? That you start having involuntary movement. That will be too much medication. Well, you may develop dyskinesia even if your medications are right. Remember, 10% per year, right? So people can have dyskinesia 10% per year after the onset of carbidopa levodopa. But if a doctor that is not conservative, very aggressive, they give you a lot of carbidopa levodopa from the beginning, it may speed up the development of dyskinesias. Instead of being 5-10 years, could be less, 2 years, 1 year. And then that will be a sign of being over-medicated. So the treatment for that won't be amantadine or medications to control dyskinesia. The treatment will be reduce carbidopa levodopa, just to give you the dopamine your brain needs and no more than that.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. So I've also heard on the other side where people would prefer to move more involuntary with those dyskinesias than losing mobility. Is that true? Have you seen that?
Completely correct. If you do a poll here and then you ask the patients, if you have to, let's say you have fluctuations, the roller coaster up and down, what do you prefer? To be on, meaning a good with some involuntary movements, let's say too much on, or to be rigid, unable to move with shakes? And they will say they will prefer the dyskinesias over the off. Of course, we would like you to be in the middle, not too much, not too little, in the middle. And that's what we call good on. Good on means on without troublesome dyskinesias or without dyskinesias. But sometimes not possible. That's why you have the anti-dyskinesias medication. But yes, if dyskinesias are mild, you don't need to treat. If they are bothersome, you need adjustments or maybe amantadine, gocovri, etc. Or if nothing works for dyskinesia, then the last option will be deep brain stimulation.
Thank you. And I'll propose one last question to you, Dr. Moore. Sure. Can a person with a pacemaker also do or have DBS? Someone also wants to clarify what DBS is again. So if you have a pacemaker, can you have the surgery, and just highlighting generally what DBS is?
Yeah, well, DBS stands for deep brain stimulation. And then remember that the surgery consists on installing, putting 2 wires in your brain, deep into your brain. That's why it's called deep brain stimulation, because the wire is gonna transmit an electricity which is coming from a little box that is on your chest. That is called a pulse generator. This pulse generator generates electricity, goes to your brain and then into your brain, and then it's gonna make the abnormal electrical activity that you have because your Parkinson's to be normal again. So it reestablish peaceful electrical activity in the brain. Yeah, in patients that have the pacemaker, we usually recommend, if they have the pacemaker on the left, there is no problem. You can still have the deep brain stimulation, but we will put the generator on the other side, on the right side. Or we can sometimes put it on the stomach to avoid conflict of the information. But yes, you can have it, there is no problem.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. And for anyone who would like to be connected with Dr. Moore's office and his expert team, please feel free to reach out to the Parkinson's Foundation. We'll also be sending a post-event email with Dr. Moore's office contact information, and just letting you all know that today's event has been recorded. So if you'd like to review all the material that Dr. Moore has presented to us today, we will be sending a link of today's presentation in that post-event email. And I'd just like to thank Dr. Moore sincerely so much for spending your Thursday evening with us here in the state of Florida, up the East Coast. And for anyone who's joining us from anywhere else, thank you so much for spending your time with us to share your knowledge and to answer these questions from our Parkinson's community. So with that, I'd just like to conclude today's presentation and to remind you to visit parkinson.org/PD Health at Home to learn more about our virtual events and to reach out to the Parkinson's Foundation's helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO, or you can email us at helpline@parkinson.org. We hope you'll stay connected with us, join us on social media, visit the website, email us, call us. We'd love to hear from you. We can't wait to see you again in person. Until then, be well, stay safe, and stay kind. Thank you again, Dr. Moore.
Thank you.